Okay, here we are. This is episode number 125 of the Cozy Corner of Cinema. This is being recorded on Monday, August 19th, 2024 at 2:51 p.m. It's a beautiful day outside, a little cloudy. We got some sprinkling of rain a little bit. And then the sun came out through the clouds and became a little muggy, but it's not too bad. I actually do have the fan on in the background, but it's further away and it's on a low setting, so it's not going to interfere with the audio, which has been a bit of an issue in recording some of these episodes. It feels as though every time I go to record, I have to have the fan on, and then when I'm not recording, it's not an issue. But either way, here we are. It's a wonderful day. It's a wonderful day to get work accomplished. It's the start of the work week, so to speak, unless you are in the mindset, like I am, of working 7 days a week at honing your craft, whatever it might be. In this case, it is getting all of this work done, and time is never, ever on our side, so we have to do what we can to ensure that we use it as wisely as possible. And that means cutting out really all nonsense, man, because once you fall behind, then you end up trying to pace yourself, trying to get back up to where you want to be. It's a lot of focus, and it can be difficult sometimes, but if you stay focused and you stay true to your craft and true to yourself, then we can get the job accomplished. There's just so much writing to accomplish. There's so much reading. I mean, that stack of books I got is just piling up, man. I got to get to those books, and the films are never endless. It's just life's work, man. It's what we live for every single day. Everybody has different life's goals, and you got to find what yours are. Unless you want to just drift through life, then that's okay. You know, you have to kind of live your life the way you want to live it. But I don't want any of that nonsense, man. I ain't gonna be drifting through my own life. I got to be making sure that the job is getting done each and every day of the week, and that's what I intend to do, man. So it's great to. I hadn't mentioned before previously the new documentary out that I've been looking forward to. It played and I saw it, and what a joy it is to see. What a joy it was to watch from just this year. Documentary on someone who I've talked about many, many times in the show, Norman Mailer. The documentary is How to Come Alive with Norman Mailer. Directed by Jeff Zimbalist. Written by Jeff Zimbalist and Victoria Marquette. And it's a great introductory look into the controversial and notable life of famed American novelist, writer, director, screenwriter, actor Norman Mailer, controversial figure. He came out of the swing with his first book, The Naked and the Dead. It got a lot of attention. It was incredibly well received. I think he may have even won the Pulitzer Prize for that one. I know he won it at least twice, and I think that was the first time he won it. And then his career from there on out, his books receiving not the strongest of critical praise, and of course his personal life, his marriages, his ideologies. He's a very notable figure, and he's somebody who is often, I think, hearing, I guess, maybe some certain events on the outside, people may have one idea of him. But what I was talking about last year was when I read that book, Norman Mailer, A Double Life, which was just one of the strongest books that I've read, written by J. Michael Lennon. And that was published in 2013. Mailer passed away in 2007. So that book had enough time to be able to properly reflect on a full life of someone who there's a lot more going on. And the thing with this film is that I think because I've read that book, which is 900 some odd pages, I don't know how many pages it is exactly, but it's a very thick book. The film works better as more of an introductory look into Norman Mailer's life. The book itself is also 960 pages. I just looked at that here. And so it touches on some of the big events of his life, including the stabbing of his wife, the filming of Maidstone, and the issue with Rip Torn. It talks about his clashing with the feminists at the time, and talks about what would then become the documentary Town Bloody Hall. It talks about doesn't really get into his film career a whole lot. Maidstone's really the only one that goes more in depth in, and I think of his films is probably his most interesting. Like, it doesn't even touch on Tough Guys Don't Dance. I mean, this documentary is only about, I don't even say only, but I think it was about an hour 45. So I mean, you're trying to get of somebody's full life in an hour 45. It's just not going to happen. But I think what the film successfully does. What this documentary does is have a more nuanced look at Mailer as a person, somebody who had a lot of rage in him and somebody who had a lot of anger. But somebody who was also a genius as well, and somebody who perhaps maybe fed off of this intentionally being the bad guy or intentionally provoking people. He was somebody who they would show clips and you'd hear stories, people like yelling on the audience, like insulting him and making fun of him and stuff, and he took it very much in stride. You get the sense that those kind of things never really bothered him. It's more so things in his own life that really kind of festered at the underneath. And and then you get older and you sort of start to chill out on a lot of these things. I mean, one of the things the film does bring up, one of the more notable parts is his appearance on the Dick Cavett show, with the feud that he was having with Gore Vidal. Gore Vidal, who made some very inappropriate comments about him in the paper, and Norman Mailer, who himself was already. I mean, in this situation, it's what I always got out of it is I was always on Norman Mailer's side. I thought Gore Vidal, who's also a genius writer in his own right, ultimately made some inappropriate comments toward him, but it's a matter of how Norman kind of conducted himself that really kind of turned people off to him, and eventually had the audience and even Dick Cavett himself kind of turn against him. But interestingly enough, the film actually doesn't even talk about how, although they had this feud later on in life. Gore Vidal and Norman actually made up in a way where they were doing a production together, and in their older years they ended up, I think Gore Vidal may have even apologized to him. I don't remember, because I read the book last year. But so, I mean, from a film standpoint, I would say what I was talking about before recently with Godard Cinema is that with that film, even though that was an introductory kind of look at Godard for somebody who was Jean-Luc Godard, that is, for somebody who may not be familiar with him or his work, where that film kind of suffered is that it's all very surface level, and ultimately works better as just who is Godard and what is he notable for. This has that in a way, but at the same time, I think what it really shines at is having what I said before, that nuanced look, and also tons and tons of great archival footage, great interviews. I didn't even realize how many kids he had. He has like 6 or 7 kids because he had like 6 marriages, and sort of putting a spotlight on Norman Mailer's ideologies against kind of the contemporary world around us, and how he would have reacted to some of the, especially with the prevailing. I mean, he died in 2007, so the internet was already a big thing. But now with social media and everybody has a voice, and cancel culture, and everybody having the very extreme opinions without any kind of gray area in between, sort of. Him kind of there's a great kind of interview at the end where he sort of foreshadows sort of this unruly internet age, because even at that point, I mean, it's sort of like if you want anything, you just get it on your phone, man. You don't have to go anywhere. There's nothing to do, and I'm guilty of that myself, man. I always talk about, I'm not someone who wants to go to a store and shop around. I'd rather just get it on the internet. But the film, because it brings up these ideas and it brings up interviews with Norman and kind of reflecting that against contemporary society. Not so much so where it becomes the whole part of the film, but just as an addendum to the film, sort of what would Norman kind of have to say about maybe the last like 10 or so years. It's all very fascinating. I remember listening to a podcast a while ago, and I'm not going to rail on or anything, but I did have to shut it off because I thought one of the guests on there was just being, I don't even know how they got on the topic, they were just really railing against Norman Mailer and saying some really unkind things, and the conversation became very one-sided, and I think people are a lot more nuanced and complicated than this. I mean, when you have somebody like Norman Mailer, who is for every intent or for every reason one of the great American novelists, it's sort of like, okay, but what kind of caveat does that come with? Who is the person actually behind this? And I don't think that it's fair to kind of say somebody is completely morally good or bad. I think everyone is much more complicated than that, and obviously context is important to any situation, but by just kind of going off on someone, they were just saying some really unkind things that I was just like, man, I can't listen to this anymore. There's nothing productive coming out of this conversation. It's just, you're just railing against this guy. But the documentary itself is one of my favorite things I've seen this year. I don't know how much of a release this has really gotten. I imagine this is probably on VOD. If not, I can imagine this is probably on Canopy at least pretty soon. Because even even though I knew all the information in this and I knew what was going on, really just a lot of the footage, a lot of the interviews. It was great hearing interviews from his remaining wives, the kids, talking about their differing relationships with Norman. One of the daughters had a very kind of not necessarily troubling relationship, but she was very honest and said that he wasn't a very good father. He was very distant. He didn't really pay a lot of attention to her, and you feel for her because you understand that this is somebody who's living this kind of big lifestyle, who now is a quote unquote famous person, and what does that entail? Sort of like how does that affect you as a person now that every microphone is on you, every camera is on you. Everybody's gonna have an opinion on you, no matter if what you say is out of context or. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in the film that they didn't even touch on some of those controversial kind of statements. Going into like the women's rights movements and stuff. I really can't recommend that book enough. Or just looking into more of Norman Mailer's work. I think the man was truly a complicated genius, but I was just so happy. I mean, this is one of these films where I just got out of the theater and I felt completely rejuvenated in cinema. At least just because I've become so. Disenchanted with kind of contemporary spectacle cinema that when I see something like this, it feels like an oxygen tank, like kind of like being hooked up to you. It's sort of just like you can't breathe, and then somebody puts a mask on you, and they press that button, and there you go. Or they put the oxygen in, and it's like, wow, I feel great, man. I feel like a whole new person. I mean, it's just I think a film like this is we're at a point now, I feel like, sincerely, that I don't think they really make. There's not a lot of films on a grand level that are made for adults anymore. And when I say that, I mean contemporary mainstream films. There was a point where you could have contemporary spectacle films alongside films made for a more discerning audience. And now it feels like while I do enjoy many spectacle films, don't get me wrong, and of course I enjoy seeing them in the cinema, I just see some of the output, especially, I mean, even just this year alone, and I just really have to question, cinema is not, it's not just passive entertainment, and I mean, it's, when I watch something like this and I actually get out of the film, I actually get out of the theater, and I'm still pondering a lot of these questions and thoughts, not just because it's a documentary, but because it's a film with something more going on with it, there's just so much being put out that it's just noise, man. It's just, you just see it, you see the trailer for it, and you're just like, what is going on here, man? And that's, I'm not dogging any film. Obviously, every film is a process. Every film is there's no easy film to make, and I get that. But the distinction between a film and a movie becomes far more apparent, where a movie is more like cotton candy. It's just like, what are you getting out of cotton candy besides it tastes kind of, it tastes good at first, and it kind of makes you sick, and a film can be rated R and still basically, it can be made for children. I mean, there's so many films that come out now that you see rated R, and they're just not even. I mean, it's just for teenagers, man. It's for kids. This is ridiculous, man. There's so few films being released on such a grand scale now that actually feel like, that actually feel like, wow, I actually got something out of this film. I'm thinking back to this year, and I think about films like Horizon Chapter 1 and The Bike Riders, just films made for adults, films that are dealing with kind of headier topics. And yeah, something like Horizon has action spectacle sequences. But it has interesting characters. I mean, it feels not just the fact that it feels like an old school Western, but the more so that, like, it's not concerned with keeping your attention. It's concerned with having these interesting characters, having these settings, having just all these interweaving parts to it. And to me, I get something far more out of that than some superhero thing. And then that's fine. I'm not dogging the superhero thing. Obviously, they make a lot of money. People love them, and I'm never going to be that guy who's going to be like, I don't get people like this. I get people like it. I completely understand. I just do feel like, you can only eat so much fast food before you kind of want something more nutritious. And I feel like with some of the movies coming out lately, I really kind of scratch my head as to the longevity of what this is going to do. But that's a whole other conversation. My point is, though, is that when you see if something like this, or I'm talking about something like this, or the Bike Riders, or the Bike Riders and Horizon are being released on 3,000 screens. I obviously understand that something like this is being released on maybe like 500, if that. Or I get that. I'm not comparing it to that. I'm just saying more so that when you see a glut of just noise, and then you actually see something more thought provoking and more maybe not necessarily intellectual, but something far more intellectually stimulating, then that's really where it kind of shines above the rest like a rocket ship. Kind of like, wow, okay, so we can still have we can still actually get something out of these theatrically released films. It's not just entertainment. There's nothing wrong with it being entertainment. It's fine. I mean, people like roller coasters. That's great. But some of these movies, I just really got to scratch my head at as to what uh, it's whatever. That's a whole other conversation. I know I'm kind of trailing off there, but either way, I did really want to just talk about this wonderful documentary. Keep an eye on it. It should probably be on Canopy sometime soon. I noticed that when I open up Canopy, there's a lot of recent films that kind of quietly got released that we're now on there. And so check on Canopy if you're not on Canopy. I mean, it's free through your library. I've mentioned it on the show a bunch before. There are tons and tons and tons of just wonderful films on there. I mean, documentary fans especially. You have tons of Frederick Wiseman's films on there, which apparently I read recently they're getting actually more of a digital distribution now. So hopefully that means that it kind of opens it up more for a wider distribution. Because previously, outside of Canopy, trying to watch Frederick Wiseman's documentaries has always been a little tricky. They're sold through his website, but they're very pricey, and they're very, to my knowledge, I think they're just bare bones discs. I think it's really just the documentary. Like I said, it's just the feature. So it'd be $50 for a DVD, and because he has such a wealth of documentaries, you can't really justify that. But on Canopy, there are tons and tons and tons of his documentaries on there. He's still going strong. He just had his new one this year, Menu Plaisir, which was such a wonderful, wonderful documentary. And these are the kinds of films I kind of gravitate myself towards more. Not strictly just documentaries, even though documentaries I think are far, far more valuable as just great art as compared to. Let me give a sip of this coffee here. As to the noise kind of spectacles that get released theatrically. But both of them have their have their place in the world. I definitely am not dogging on spectacle films, even though it may sound like this. I've enjoyed many spectacle films this year, actually, and there's other spectacle films I look forward to. I just see kind of just some of these titles coming out, and I really kind of have to, I just don't feel a little out of touch, admittedly. But that's why everybody gets their own things out of it, and that's totally great, and God bless them for that. But these kind of films, the Norm Mailer documentaries and the Frederick Wiseman documentaries and even, I mean, I'm looking at some of like my favorite films that I've watched this year, and I've seen just a lot of really great films this year. Even of recently, just seeing films like Dee Dee and Kneecap. And I'm looking at here because I keep a list of the films I see theatrically in theaters. And that's talking about for like Ghostlight and Robot Dreams and just these great films, man. And then the big mainstream films. I mean, like the Bike Riders and Horizon. I think were just really exceptional films. But hey, you give some, you get some. It's every movie, every film has their place. And they all have the right to exist among each other because it's not my place nor anybody else's place to kind of have any sort of say or any sort of domineering force on what happened, on what shows when and where, man. It's all good, man. It's all good. This coffee is getting warm as all hell, man. Which means that I got to drink this fast before it gets too cold and I can't drink it anymore. I guess I can drink it, but then it starts to taste kind of messed up. So don't want that at all. But yeah, man, it's been a pretty good year for films, I would say overall. I mean, now we're in the second half of the year. There's plenty to look forward to. I mean, I don't get excited for movies anymore because I don't see the point of that. You're just setting yourself up for expectations that aren't there. But there are some that I'm keeping my eye on, of course. I mean, like Megalopolis, I'm real curious about, man. I'm just really curious what Coppola's doing with that, in a positive way. Much what I'm talking about with Horizon. I think there's I was thinking about it recently. I was listening to, actually, funnily enough, what am I talking about? I was listening to, I got a recommendation on YouTube of Bill Burr talking about Horizon. I think Bill Burr's a very funny guy. I enjoy his comedy. I actually enjoyed his movie, Old Dad. I thought that was pretty funny. It was a fun kind of comedy on Netflix. But I was listening to him talk about it, and he made a great point that I was thinking about. It's sort of like, because, people, Kevin Costner with that film, he put $30 million of his own money into it. And it didn't get the strongest of reviews and stuff. And then Chapter 2 right now has been indefinitely delayed, although it is premiering at Venice Film Festival. So, although I saw somebody post the other day that it's getting a 4K before the end of the year, so I don't know if it's going to even get a theatrical or not. I mean, I hope it does, because I'll be there opening day. But there's a weird thing where I almost feel like people kind of they know that he invested this money, and like almost wanting him to fail, and wanting him to like show yeah, what was the point? I saw just some ridiculous comments. People are going like, why would he invest all this money in this? Why would he sell it? It's like, what are you talking about, man? This dude's I mean, he's, instead of sitting around and talking about what you want to do with your life, I mean, dude's actually going out there and doing it, man. Coppola's putting $100 million of his own money into Megalopolis, so regardless of whether or not the film comes out positive or negative, it's completely your prerogative. But I mean, it's just ridiculous statements, man. It's the same thing, just like, oh, why did you learn how to, why'd you spend all those hours learning how to play guitar, man? What's the point of that? It's like, brother, what are you talking about, man? Somebody who wants to actually do something and wants to actually live their dreams, and they took a big risk, man. I mean, and whether you like or dislike these films is beside the point. The fact of the matter is, I'm just thinking, I remember listening to Easy Riders and Raging Bulls, and there was a great section. I mean, Peter Bogdanovich is all throughout the book, but talking about, he's this up-and-coming hotshot kid. He has this string of quality films, Targets, Last Picture Show, What's Up, Doc, Paper Moon, and it's almost like, and he had a chip on his shoulder, and I mean, according to the book, he may have been a little arrogant, which is neither here nor there. That's just what the book is saying. But it's almost like at that time, people were waiting for him to fail. They were so eager for him to make a bad film. And then he had some films later on that were not too critically well received. I haven't seen some of his later stuff. I think the last of his films I've seen was probably At Long Last Love. Which I'm actually the minority on. I'm not really the biggest fan of that film, but I get why people like it. But I know the Burt Reynolds one people really don't like. But it's almost like people were so happy that he failed, and I find that so bizarre because, I mean, admittedly, I'm not really the biggest fan of What's Up, Doc. It's not really for me, but like I love The Last Picture Show, and Targets is great, and I've actually not seen Paper Moon. I actually have it recorded off TCM right now. But I'm like, man, I want this guy to do great films, man. Why would you want the guy to not succeed at that? Even directors I may not be a fan of. Even I can admit that, all right, well, I'm not a fan of their work, but I mean, they can make a film that I'm like, man, that's a solid film. I mean, I'm not a fan of Wes Anderson, so to speak. His films really aren't for me. But even I could tell you, yeah, I think Fantastic Mr. Fox is a really solid film, and I may not be a fan of his work, but even I can say that, all right, I enjoy that film quite a bit. It's like people. I don't want Wes Anderson to fail. I'm not like gloating. Like I'm like, oh man, I hate it. Or if his film gets like maybe so like lesser reviews, I'm not like sitting there like, yeah, all right, extra shows him. It's like, what are you talking about, man? That's like insanity talk, man. It's like I want everyone to do the best work possible, man. I want everyone to kind of really put out there what they want to put out there, man, and really kind of do what they want to do for any film, for any artistic endeavor, man. If a band makes an album that it's a different sound, and people are like, oh man, you can change the sound up. This band's horrible now, and they make the same album again, the same sound. They're like, oh man, this band's making the same sound 100 times now. What the hell's going on here? It's like, kind of what I'm talking about before is that everyone on the internet now has such an extreme opinion that no film and no band is like, or no album or whatever book is it's either good or bad. It's either the best thing ever or the worst thing ever. There's no nuance, man. So it's like when I see a documentary about Norman Mailer and somebody who is a complicated person, who led a complicated life, that there's real nuance there, man. It's a gray area between somebody who has these inner personal demons and has this rage in him, but also could be very kind and caring. We're not talking about with Jean-Luc Godard before. He could be a very, very, troubling person to be around. He'd be very cruel and demanding, but then he could be very kind and very sweet. And I mean, people are very complicated, man. Everyone is very complicated. So this idea of just black and white, this film sucks, this film is the best, I think that's just absolute nonsense, man. I mean, on this show, I'm not going to sit around and tell you why. I've seen plenty of bad films, even recently. I saw a bad film last week. I mean, okay, let me put it this way. I saw a film I didn't like last week. I don't think there's no such thing as a good or a bad film. It's all what you like it, don't like. I'm not going to sit here and say I didn't like this film. Here's why I didn't like this film. Because I was talking to acquaintances who loved that film, and I'm like, that's great, man. You got something out of it that I did. I'm never going to try to convince you not to like it. I'd rather talk about a film that maybe divisive that I liked, and kind of put it out there of just, hey, maybe you can look at this film differently, man. I can look at a film like Skinamarink or Skinamarink, however you say, which I think is a great film, and I have close acquaintances who think it's terrible, and that's fine. I'm not gonna, but I'm gonna say my points. I'm gonna say, well, I thought it was good for this reason, and that's fine. But if the roles are reversed, I thought it was terrible. I'm not gonna say why did you like this film. It's this difference between an interesting conversation and demeaning kind of condescension that I feel like the internet age has really kind of brought on, where if you disagree with somebody, it's far more condescending and far more aggressive than just having a conversation. Like what I'm talking about before with like Norman Mailer and Gore Vidal on the Dick Cavett show. It's like actual like intellectuals having a discussion, and well, granted that's sort of an exception because of it being a bigger kind of interview with Norman, kind of going against the audience, going against Dick Cavett. It's like you would have these times of where you have like actual conversations with people, and it wasn't just these like bubblegum kind of appearances, because you're a movie star, you got to go on these talk shows, you got to promote your film. I get that, man, but I do think that something is lost in that, in a way where I think that's why podcasts are so wonderful, is that you can actually have long form conversations, and you can actually have stimulating conversations about whatever you like, and that's why I love podcasts. I also listen to podcasts. I listen to many kinds of podcasts. Funny enough, I don't listen to a lot of film podcasts. There's not a lot that I really gel with. I like to listen to like acquaintances podcasts and stuff, like people I know. I like to hear what they have to say and all that, because I trust their opinions, and whether I agree or disagree, I always like to hear what they have to say and kind of be like, oh, cool. I just have acquaintances who there's films I've never heard of, and they're going on like Toys Are Not for Children. That's a great film. I had a good acquaintance of mine. I hadn't even heard of that film. He was really hot on it. He was saying how great it was. And I'm like, man, I wasn't even familiar with this film. I'm going to buy that Blu-ray and watch it. I watched it, and what do you know? I loved it. I'm like, okay, well, that's great, man, because I actually have some context, because I agree with a lot of what he has to say, and sometimes I disagree with what he has to say, but that's alright. It's better than Joe Schmo going like, this film sucks, this film's great, Norman Mailer sucks, he's great. It's like, man, it's all white noise. That's why I beg you, just get off social media, man. I mean, there's nothing inherently wrong with it, but people who just spend all day on there and just scrolling and it's just nonsense, man. It's just like you're just getting into arguments with people you don't even know. Just don't read the comments. Don't do any of that, man. It's ridiculous, man. Just you have to kind of we're only here on this planet for so many years, and no day is guaranteed, and no minute is guaranteed. I could hit record stop on this, and I could pass away an hour later. That's life, man. That's just what's going to happen. So it's like you're going to spend all your time being so angry and upset, and just spending all your time online fighting with strangers about politics or art or religion or anything like that. It's like, what is it doing to you, man? It's just making you mad, man. It's all it's doing to you. It's trying to make you mad, to get you to click on things, to get you to leave angry comments, to cast people in a certain light that you don't like, and make generalizations about people whom you disagree with, and it's just ridiculous, man. It's absolute nonsense, and I get it's kind of I guess I'm kind of the hypocrite for going off on that. But I mean, here we are, man. Life is just so precious, and it's so wonderful, and I think back to the people in my life I have right now. I think back to just like people whom I've seen recently, and I think about my experiences with them, and I have such wonderful experiences with these people, and I cherish these moments, and I enjoy talking to these people, because these are people whom, even if I disagree with on anything, politically, religiously, art, on anything like that, I enjoy the conversation, I enjoy being with these people. These are actual socializations that actually benefit your life, and are not just meaningless, kind of like staring at a wall and talking about the weather or something, man. It's just nonsense, man. It's just being aware of the people in your life, and the art in your life, and what you want to do with your life, man, and really kind of just taking it by the balls. But I kind of went off on a tangent there. I sort of just I actually had another film I was going to talk about, but I'll save it for next time. I'm going to try to either tomorrow, but most likely Wednesday. I'm going to get a new episode of People Pictures out this week. I got a whole bunch of films I want to do, so I don't even know which one I'm going to do next. But keep an eye on that. I would probably say if you're looking forward to it, then it's most likely going to be on Wednesday. If I can't get it on Wednesday, I will not be able to get it out the rest of the week. So I'd rather get it out before next week, just to kind of have a steady schedule for that. So keep an eye on that on Wednesday. But anything can happen tomorrow. I might have the time, but I'm not gonna make any promises that I can't keep. But it's a wonderful day. It's a wonderful life out. Enjoy the people in your life. Lead the life you want to live. Work on your art. Work on your dreams. Make them come true, man. Because I mean, ain't no one gonna do that for you. And if you're waiting by the telephone for somebody to answer your, to get your dreams for you, put them all in a box, ship them to you 2 days shipping, Amazon Prime, it's just not going to happen, man. You really got to go out there and really be the person that you want to be. So, hey, thank you guys so much for listening. I really appreciate it. Take care. All the best. God bless. And I'll be back next time.